want to take a moment and introduce my colleague Mike Smith and myself. Mike and I serve as principals at AlignOrg Solutions, and we're a small niche consultancy that specializes in the area of organization design. And in addition to organization design, we work with our clients to help them clarify their marketplace position and strategy, to assess their organization's capability to deliver, to ultimately design the right organization to win in the marketplace, and then to implement and effectively realize the results that that design can bring for them. And most of our work is jumping in, rolling up our sleeves and doing that with our clients. But some of the time we also take some of the same tools, methods, and practices that we use in our consultancy and share those with internal professionals so that they can build their own internal capabilities and be more of a change partner for executives. We also do work with executives in helping them prepare for the long transformation journeys that seem to be happening in an always-on fashion these days. Today, through our webinar, we're going to talk a lot about the topic of shared services, how to take advantage of those, how to maximize the results that you get from that, and also the process for how to build them effectively from the ground up. And we have been able to learn as we've done this with a lot of different organizations. Some of these organizations we've been able to partner with. Some of them we have certainly read about. All of us have probably read about, but we find that the stories and the case studies that we get from our partner organizations really help to jumpstart the conversation. Mike and I have the opportunity as we go in and out of organizations to pick up and learn different patterns and different trends that are going on in organizations. And one of the sort of sustaining trends that we've seen for the last many years is this issue of how to get the most out of a shared service organization. It seems like almost inevitably as we go in and out of companies, everyone's got a shared service these days. It usually is set up on the back end of the business around the different support functions, things like human resources, information technology, procurement, sometimes facilities, finance, other kinds of back office functions. And these shared service organizations almost inevitably seem to be causing some kind of angst for the organization. That angst can be that we're not as efficient as we want to be with the shared service. It can be that the shared service is not performing as well as everyone hoped or expected. Sometimes we hear complaints that the shared service is constraining or crimping the business. And so as we continue to work with organizations to try to help them set up and then optimize or maximize a shared service organization, we wanted to share today some of the learnings that we've had and some of the insights we've gained that organizations who get it right, what they seem to be doing and what they seem to be following in terms of steps and practices. So that's really the intent of our conversation today. Now, Vani, when she kicked off this with the logistics before we started, indicated that we're open to questions. And Mike and I both appreciate questions because that helps us tailor some of our comments and so forth to the things that will matter most to those that are listening today. So with that set up, we invite the questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike now to kind of get us started into some of the things that really trigger the setup and start of shared service organizations to start with.
Thanks, Reed. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and talk about this. This is one of my favorite subjects. And as Reed said, we've been dealing with, back office shared service transformation for a number of years now, but really in the last 2 or 3 years, we're even seeing organizations that were either happy in a holding type of a situation, they do a merger and they're happy with leaving the company like it is and not trying to gain some of those possible efficiencies and opportunities for synergies there. All of that almost not 100% going away, but the drive to looking at that more often. And because of that, our activity in this space has grown over the past few years. So this is something that's really kicked it off. And there's lots of different ways that trigger, lots of different things that might trigger one of these. And some of them that we've worked on in the last couple of years is a global multinational company. They were an industrial company trying to become more efficient within the IT space and the HR space. And we're a global company with regional offices and regional requirements, language requirements. And so the question became, how do you begin to share services and deliver services across so much complexity on the back end? We've had other companies that came to us and said, hey, we're maturing, we're moving in the maturing model. We've kind of just clipped things on over time as we've grown. And so now it's time for us to take a look at where are the opportunities to marry some of those things up. A market has changed. Companies come to us. One of our chemical companies came to us. This is the third one down, and needed to really show the growth because the market was shifting, and the major players in the market were actually doing different kinds of mergers and acquisitions that were causing this global company that was one of the leaders in the market to reposition themselves, and so therefore repositioning the choices and the capabilities that they needed to have from a shared services opportunity. And then in the financial office, it's called and said, hey, it's not okay for us to just be at par or just be good. We need to be great at certain areas of shared service. Because a shared service doesn't always mean that it's low cost model. Sometimes it means a high-skilled, high-delivery model that is leveraged across the organization to deliver strategy. So those are just some of the triggers. There's lots of triggers out there that have caused us or suddenly call us and say, hey, can we partner with you and work through these things? And as we talk today, what we want to do is we want to actually provide.
So let me jump in here. It seems that as Mike was walking through this, the listeners today may resonate with some of these possible triggers for a shared service organization. There may be additional triggers, as Mike indicated. I think the important thing to acknowledge is that one size does not fit all. One of the things that we find when we walk around organizations and go in and out of different types of organizations is that we hear leaders talking about, well, our shared services, as if that is some sort of unilateral or singular concept. And the reality is, as Mike just indicated, it's not. There are different things that cause an organization to undertake and to install some type of shared service. And I think these illustrations that Mike has just walked through really highlight that. And I would encourage you listening today to say to yourself, all right, if I'm working in my organization and we've got a shared service, what are some of the prevailing notions about why we set it up and what is it meant to achieve? Because sometimes the dissatisfaction with a shared service may not be because it's not running well or that it's not functioning the way that it could. It's that the expectations of what it's supposed to do may not be fully aligned. For example, if, as Mike explained in the last trigger here, if the shared service organization was set up to improve capabilities and service, someone else in the organization might say, why does it cost so much to have a shared service? Because in their minds, they're thinking the trigger was cost savings. And so it's important to have some similarities in terms of what is the intent of the shared service and what problem is it trying to solve. Now, as we go forward, sorry, Mike, were you going to add something?
I was just going to say, as we go forward, and you're probably going to say it as well, but the idea here is for you to walk away from the presentation today with a framework of how to think about this. So what are the concepts? Reed's going to talk about that right now, but then what is the framework that I might take from this conversation as I start to think about shared services and how they need to interact and how we should build them out within your organization. So Reed, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So as Mike said, some of the key concepts that we'd like to base our discussion on today actually come out of our book called Mastering the Cube. Many are probably already familiar with this, so we won't spend a lot of time here. But Mastering the Cube refers to the idea that if we think about an organization in the broadest sense as like a Rubik's Cube, the idea is that if the more you can align each side of the cube, the better your organization potentially can perform. And so we don't get credit if we just solve the structure part of the organization, or if we just get great work processes, or if we get the right talent. If we get the right talent and put them into bad work processes, we still get a bad outcome. We ultimately have to, in essence, solve for all dimensions of the organization, the way the work is done, the way we structure it, the way we measure and count for performance, our talent, our culture, and so forth. And the more we can align all sides of the cube, it's just like solving the Rubik's Cube. You get to say it's complete. And as we think about the shared service concept, there are three big ideas that come out of it. The first is, whenever we're setting up an organization, we want to protect the work that drives strategy, which means that anything that becomes transactional is an opportunity for us to find efficiencies potentially, and to set it apart from the work that really drives differentiation. And that leads to the second concept, is we want to put our resources behind the strategic work and try to manage that in a way that will allow us to stand out in the marketplace and be distinguished, and then to take work that is not strategic and drive that for greater efficiency or greater standardization and consistency. And then the final principle that we want to base our discussion on today is this idea that we want to guard against functional imperatives. Sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, I've gone to a conference and I've heard a great idea, it might be a case study from another organization, or I've read about a best practice, and I thought, you know, our company could really do some neat things with that idea. And so I'll come back and I'll bring that idea forward. What I've forgotten to do sometimes is ask myself, does our business really need this functional imperative? Or am I creating, building, and consuming resources that are really misaligned to what we're ultimately trying to do? And so when we think about this concept of shared services, what we really want to do is base it on these fundamental principles, because these are the things that will help prompt the right questions and the right dialogue among leaders.